Alright, so I plan on starting a new little series on this channel where I build decks in Duel Links only using common or normal quality rarity cards. Because in Duel Links, they have 3 different rarities when it comes to card. There's normal, rare, super rare, and ultra rare. With normal being the absolute lowest tier. You know, they usually just give normal to like the crappy cards. So I have been building a series of decks only with normal quality rarity, or it's also called common quality, so I'm not really sure which one to call it. And then I'm just gonna see how well those decks do, and if I find one that's really good, I'll try my best to get King of Games with it. So for a lot of these, I'm just going to be experimenting in Gold League, because a lot of them suck. And I'm very limited in my card choices. So for this first one, I decided to go with an insect deck because Koiki Mary Beetle was a common quality for some reason. This card's actually really good. I'm surprised. It's a 1900 attack beat stick, which is super rare in the common quality thing. Most of them are around 1800. If something has 1900 attack, they usually make it a rare or better. So I kind of lucked out with this. If your opponent special summons a light or dark monster, it's put into defense position. Which gives you a turn to beat over it. I also played it with Insect, with Parasite Infestation, because my limitations on this are just literally just with the card quality of the cards in my deck. I can use any skill I want, though. So I have been experimenting with skills that give me good cards. You know, just as a way to get something good in the deck, because, God, the common qualities suck so bad. So with a Parasite Infestation, it puts one of those into your opponent's deck. If they draw it, it gets rid of their card draw for that turn, forces them to special summon a monster, they lose 1,000 life points. And with a Summon Breaker, it counts as one of their summons for the turn. So if they do 2 more summons, it just ends their turn, which is a really good effect. Not consistent, kind of a dead draw. I should just remove this card from the deck. But, you know, I wanted to try it out. This is like the first ever deck I built with common quality, so I was still experimenting with things. And also because Jade Insect Whistle, a card very commonly played with Parasite Infestation, is a common quality card. So I could actually use like the main combo piece, you know, with this skill. I also built the deck, you know, currently I'm playing the unnerfed version of it, where, you know, it just happens no matter what, but they're going to nerf it like in a couple of days, where you need to have at least 4 insect type monsters in order to use it. So I just built the deck with that in mind. So yeah, it doesn't even matter that it's the unearthed one right now. So, for this series, I don't have a name for it yet. I'm still thinking of it. I was thinking, you know, only low rarity cards, only common quality, only normal quality. Because like I was doing streams where I was testing a lot of these decks, and I kept putting like I'm only using common quality cards in these decks. And then people kept suggesting ultra rare, you know, higher rarity stuff. Like, they didn't really get it. Or no one was reading the title. They just kept suggesting cards that were obviously not normal quality. So I don't think that title would really work. So, you know, here's me asking for suggestions. What would be a good, catchy title for this series? For this first one, I'm just going to let future me decide on a series for it, a name for the first episode. And then I might change it or I might keep it. Anyways, let's go over some of these common quality cards. Like, there's going to be replays of this deck, you know, after I'm done talking. This first video isn't really about this deck itself because, spoiler alerts, it's a beatdown deck that relies on Power of the Guardians. That's not really too interesting. All the other ones won't really be that. I've found some other actual, like, combo decks you can do with normal rarity. So, let me go over some really good highlights of the normal rarity. First up, these are all of the synchro monsters I have access to. Like, these are all of the generic synchros. Despot Jet, Cloud Castle, Ally of Justice Field Marshal, and Airbellum. These are the only 4 generic synchro monsters I have access to. This one's not generic. It requires a spellcaster type non-tuner, but it's one of the good ones. So I just have it in here with the rest of them. Airbellum is the only one that's actually decent and easily obtainable to go into. The rest of them, not so much. So synchros aren't really on the table. In case you're wondering, why don't I add tuners to the deck? You don't really need to add tuners unless your whole engine is about going into synchros. Otherwise, there's no point in running them. I got a lot of questions like that on the streams, like, why don't you add in, a tuner? It's like, oh, it's a shame there's no normal quality insect tuners. And I had to keep explaining, it's like, I wouldn't run them anyway, because there's nothing good to go into. That's just like the mentality from, normal Yu-Gi-Oh! Where the extra deck is everything, and everything in your main deck relates to the extra deck. So it's just kind of a carryover to Duel Links. Like, there is an extra deck, synchro monsters are available, you should just play tuners, because of the option. It's like, no, the reason the extra deck's so good in the TCG is because the extra deck allows you to go into something to, like, react to whatever's on the board, which is not the case here. You just go into bigger monsters, which aren't needed unless your whole strategy is about going into those monsters. It's not really the same thing until, like, maybe X-Seeds are put into the game. Like, those would actually change it around. Synchros, just adding a tuner to the deck. If you have a good synchro monster to go into, sure, but I don't. So that's not a priority. Next up, we have just, like, common staples. So, Power of the Guardians. This is the best common quality staple, and will appear in like 90% of the decks I make, because it's so good. And I am convinced the only reason they made it common quality is because they wanted to ban it sometime in the future. And usually people don't throw a fuss if they ban like a common quality card, because, like, who cares? It's common quality. And that's what I thought they did. But considering it came out a while ago and has escaped the ban list despite being one of the most popular cards, actually, out of all the most popular cards, Power of the Guardians is the only common quality on that list. Oh, well, non-archetypical, I guess, because, they put a 6 Samurai card on here as well. I think those are the only two on the popular card list, now that I'm looking through it. Yeah, Power of the Guardians and then a 6 Samurai card. Also, 6 Samurais, I know they have lots of commons, but, try playing 6 Samurais without Chien. You're not going to have a good time. So, Power of the Guardians, if you attack into something, you get a spell counter, it gains 500 attack. And also, you can remove that spell counter to prevent destruction from battle or card effects, which is really good. Cool thing about this card, you can remove any spell counter from your side of the field to activate the protection. So, there are a couple of spell counter generating common cards that I could play in conjunction with Power of the Guardians. That's an option. I haven't done that yet. It also works defensively. It's just super good. It allows these decks to basically work. Summon Breaker, not as good. Like, sure, normal good decks can summon at least 3 times during a turn, and ending your opponent's turn immediately is decent. I was trying it out. It didn't play test very well in, like, the lower tiers where I'm experimenting with these decks. Dice Foon, basically MST. This is probably going to appear in a lot of the decks, unless I, rationalize it out some way. Dice Foon, you have to roll a dice, and if it's 1 or 6, it does nothing, and in fact, it hurts you. But if it's 2 through 5, then it's basically MST, whereas if you roll 5 exactly, it turns into Twin Twister, where you destroy 2 cards. And I did get the 5 result a few times, and basically, if I roll 5 on this card, because of how battle trap reliant Duel Links is, that can win me the game most of the times. So this card was like MVP, and, entirely relying on luck to win is kind of the whole thing with, low rarity stuff. And then I was trying Face Off because Wall of Disruption's a very popular card, and I'm pretty sure this card can stop it, but I never resolved it once, despite how many times I've tried it out. Like, I either just don't draw into it, or if I do have it, my opponent's not using Wall of Disruption. And there are a lot of other cards with low common quality. Those are just some of the highlights. I think I also have Radiant Mirror Force in this deck, and a couple of them. If you're able to stall it long enough, your opponent gets 3 cards out. Bam, their entire field goes away. And then Regeki Bottle. I've actually been able to use this to some success. If you get the 4 counters on it, you can send this card to the graveyard to destroy all your opponent's monsters, or you can use it to activate the protection. So, if you get the 4 counters on it, you can send this card to the graveyard to destroy all your opponent's monsters, whenever you want during both players' turn. So if you get this thing ramped up and it has the 4 thunder counters necessary, it becomes a spell speed 2 Raigeki, which is actually pretty good. It's just really hard to get those 4 counters on it because they only count your attacks, not your opponents, like Power of the Guardians. Okay, and that's enough talking for now. Let's go on to the actual games with this deck.